Hello, everyone. This is Andrew from WKNC 88.1 FM. I am joined here with Superbloom here in the cave at Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Why don't all of you tell me who is here and what you play in the band?
Hey Andrew, it's Mateo here. I play drums.
Hey, I'm Brian. I play bass guitar.
This is Tim. I play guitar.
This is Dave, coming in from enemy territory. I sing and play guitar.
Awesome. So I'm a pretty big fan. I added a couple tracks off of the debut a couple months back. I remember it was Planetary that had sent it to me. Shout out to Planetary. Great guys over there. First thing I wanted to ask, tell me about how Superbloom came to form. Specifically, how did y'all get the name?
So Dave and I have known each other since we were kids, and we've been playing in bands together, basically all our lives. But when we moved to New York, we wanted to put a band together. So we put out, first we recorded a demo with a friend.
Nice.
And through that friend, we met Brian. So we jammed with Brian. We hit it off. And then we were looking for a drummer, so we put an ad out on Craigslist. And Mateo replied to the Craigslist ad.
It's always a good way.
It's like a success story for Craigslist, I think.
Yeah. it's one of the few good things I've heard off of Craigslist in the entirety of its existence, essentially.
Yeah,
I actually got a great dresser from Craigslist. To shout out the dresser that I got a few months ago.
Well, hey, that's two things I've heard now. That's awesome.
We met Mateo. Nobody got stabbed, which was good. And we hit it off like right away. And now actually Brian and Mateo live together. And they just met through the band. So it's like everyone's super tight. And it has just worked since then.
Awesome.
And the name came around. How did the name come around?
I don't know how we found it, but we mentioned, hey, Brian, after what, like a week or two of hanging out?
Yeah.
That
Another name that would way worse.
Yeah. We're like, what do you think of Superbloom? And Brian freaked out. He can reenact that right now if you want. Hey, Brian, what do you think of Superbloom?
That's the sickest fucking name I've ever heard in my life. It's a great band name. It's still the best band name ever. Sorry, everyone else. It's amazing. Great job, Dave.
So when I saw the Craigslist ad and the guys reached out to me, the band name was being touted as being, I think, Low Places, like the Garth Brooks song. And I was like, and apparently that came about because you guys were literally in a bar and they played Garth Brooks in the background and you were like, Low Places seems like a good name.
Low Places is the best drinking song of all time.
Okay, so I was like, oh, that seems decent. That seems okay. And then practice number 2, we did one and they were like, okay, you're cool. Yeah, come back for a second. And then they were like, oh, okay, so I guess, do you want to be in the band? And I was like, yeah, definitely. And Dave goes, okay, well, by the way, we're called Superbloom, not Low Places. So that's how I was informed.
Last minute change there. Well, that's interesting path. I feel like some of the best band names just kind of come about out of nothing. Trying to think of some good ones off the top of my head.
I remember talking to Dave at practice about it. And if I remember right, in 2017, there was one of those enormous, they're literally called Superblooms. Those, like flower blossoms out in Death Valley where like all the flowers go off at once. And it was just like a kind of hot word. And I think that's maybe how it came up. But maybe the origin and actual super. Yeah. Yeah. It's named after like the actual Superbloom in Death Valley.
That's awesome.
Where we got the word.
And one day we'll cut a live album live from Death Valley.
Let me know when that happens. I would definitely love to hear that. Yeah. And maybe a little difficult recording conditions, but pretty typical question up next. And I already know one of the answers based off of the, may I say, awesome shirt, first of all. What's some of Superbloom's biggest influences? The shirt is Fantastic Planet by Failure, by the way, since I realize this is an audio recording and you can't see what the shirt is.
Yeah, this is a Failure Fantastic Planet t-shirt. The design's by Campton Moger from currently from Heavenward, but he used to play in Teenage Wrist.
That's a great band too.
Yeah, also huge influence. Failure, Teenage Wrist, like a lot of the like newer sort of like I don't know rock and kind of grunge-ish kind of bands for sure.
Mm.
Like when we first got together, I personally was listening to like a lot of Super Heaven, Teenage Wrist, Balance and Composure, Drug Church, that kind of stuff. But we also, were raised on all of like the classic '90s rock and alternative rock. Dave's rocking a
Hey,
old school Rage Against the Machine Evil Empire shirt.
these are all great bands I'm hearing. I think almost every single one of the ones you've listed I've played on my radio show multiple times.
I think also, like Tim said, we all grew up listening to a lot of 90s music, but also just a lot of sort of heavy music with poppy hooks and, like good melodies. I think that's a big underpinning in general of what influenced us in a lot of the songwriting. But yeah, melody and loudness. Deftones, like anything from sort of more pop punk stuff to Deftones to everything that Tim just listed to obviously.
Anything new we should check out that's on the
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
It's edited, don't worry.
I'm a big fan of this band called Bleed. There's another band called Trauma Ray that's pretty rad. Those are the two that are coming to mind right now. Yeah. I think Bleed just kind of came around. I think they just dropped their debut EP like a couple months ago, so still definitely just breaking out. Yeah. It makes it. I had to make sure that the song I was playing from them on my show was clean, and it was very difficult to find the lyrics just by searching "bleed."
We played a show last night in DC with Day Aches and Dosser, and the Rememberables, and definitely check out those guys.
Nice.
If you don't know them already, they're very good. It was our first time playing with them, but they're all great bands. All have reasonably recent music coming out, similar vibe. Yeah, really good.
Awesome. So kind of bouncing off of that, when you guys talked about that vibe of the sound, like it's easy to identify when you hear it, like with the bands that you listed, like Teenage Wrist, Balance and Composure. A lot of discourse I've seen online labels Superbloom as just straight up grunge. And I know genres and labels is something that can be pretty contentious among musicians. So what's your take on all of that? Do you care about being labeled grunge? Do you see yourself as something else? Do you even care at all about it?
I personally don't. This is Mateo. I personally don't care necessarily, but it doesn't upset me. I listen to that type of music. I listen to grunge. I grew up listening to a lot of those bands from the 90s, from sort of Seattle, etc. So it's very flattering. I don't think any of us set out or sat around a table and said, let's make grunge music or let's write music that sounds like this. And I'll let Dave and Tim speak more on this, but I think we write music that we want to listen to and that we like, and that tends to be kind of guitar-driven, heavy, melody-laden music, which in some respects is what grunge was or is. So, yeah, it doesn't bug me personally. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah. I think we've always sort of set out, and I'm sure like you might get a lot of bands saying this, but for sure it's true with us. Like we just set out to write and play the songs that we wanted to hear and listen to, and I think a lot of it is like, we love feedback and heavy distortion and just being really loud, but we also love catchy hooks and like melody and all that too, and harmony for sure. These guys do a lot of work on harmony. So yeah, I think it's like just the music that we want to hear.
It's tough to define stuff sometimes, for sure. I definitely also don't mind grunge or whatever people want to call it. If they're talking about it, then we're ahead. So you can call it whatever you want. But definitely some grunge, definitely some grunge, like alternative influence in there. But yeah, call it whatever you want. Enjoy,
Awesome. Yeah, I frequently have arguments not even arguments, just extended discussions with my roommate about this exact topic, because we always talk about the idea of musicians going in with a specific genre they want to like almost follow the formula for. And we both always say that that's just not the way to do it. It always comes across very mechanical, and it's like it was like generated through some sort of software. But if you go into it with just like meshing all of your ideas, and it comes out as just a sound, that's what we think is like the really organic way to get some of the best music out there. So I was definitely curious to hear y'all's take on that, and it's nice to know that you seem to agree with that.
Yeah, definitely.
What does a typical writing session look like for you guys in terms of whether it's jamming or actually writing lyrics, any of that?
I'll leave some of the lyric stuff to Dave for sure. Usually Dave and or Tim will bring like a demo. Dave sends over a lot of like acoustic demos with vocals, things like that we'll check out and listen to. And then either with just Mateo in the practice room, kind of working on some arranging and some drum parts before, or sometimes we'll all go and meet together and kind of just play through the tracks, work on the arrangement. It's pretty like open process, just like trying out different ideas, just like adjusting parts in the song together as a whole, just kind of hearing it in the room, because something can sound great on its own, but if it's not gelling with everybody together, it's tough to recreate and do live for sure. So yeah, usually Dave or Tim will like bring the backbone of like a chord structure, and then we'll kind of piece it together as a team.
I'd say that's pretty accurate, but what tends to actually happen is we bring in a song, we play on it, and then we'll record it on something like this, and we'll take it home, and then by the next practice, the song's either dead or it's completely changed, and then, rinse and repeat until we get to a point where we invested so much time into it can't be dead. Lyric-wise, I don't know. I don't know how to,
Yeah.
I use thesaurus.com, rhymezone.com a lot. Big slant rhyme kind of guy, so.
There's some great websites. A shout out to them.
Yeah.
Use your resources, baby.
Exactly. So, I don't know if anyone else.
Yeah, like we were saying earlier, like the whole process of creation and like kind of like putting our own sort of feel, vibe, identity, whatever you want to call it, into the song. It's for us, it seems to happen after a lot of like writing, rewriting, changing, rewriting, kind of like throwing it against the wall a lot. And what was a big change, I think, for all of us was like we all come from playing in heavier bands. Like, we played in punk bands and hardcore bands and loud bands where we're kind of standing up all practice and like going crazy all practice. But when we got together, we sort of like, we're like, all right, let's buy some seats and like let's get together and like let's talk through the parts, let's think about the parts, let's actually talk to each other and not just like play as loud as we can for an hour and a half.
Making it feel a bit more like orchestrated.
I never touched a major chord until this shit.
Let's see what else I got. I think you guys have already kind of touched on this a little bit, but are there any bands you would love to work with in the future, whether that's touring or collaborating with on records or split EPs, et cetera, et cetera?
Touring's a pretty long list of bands we'd like to work with. Deftones, probably number one.
Shout
That'd be
out.
dope. Deftones, it's hard as nails. Be great. Be a lot of fun. I'd love to tour with that band Basement. If they're touring, I don't know what their deal is, but I always really like them.
I think a lot of the bands that Tim mentioned earlier, a lot of the more, I don't know if I want to say contemporary, but let's say more recent bands that are in maybe of a similar style or stylistically could be associated to what we do, would be amazing to tour with them, and obviously kind of having similar maybe audiences. And we've been able to become quite friendly with some of them, which is great. So I'm not ruling out, Tim mentioned Heavenward, and people like that would be amazing to tour with, etc. But I mean, dream big. So I don't know, Tim, do you have some bigger names?
This is all pretty new for us. Like we just released the album in June. We're on our first run right now.
Yeah.
We're here in North Carolina. We have a few more cities to go, and it's been like crazy fun so far. But we obviously daydream about all the bands that we could go on the road with and play with. You know, locally there's a band like Quicksand who we all love, and they're in Brooklyn. We would just want to like roll over and be like, hey, let's go on a tour together.
That'd be killer.
Love them. And there's a bunch of bands on the road right now that we're really into, like Military Gun and Spice are on like a little run right now. But we would basically jump on, like we would love to jump on with any bands that dig us and want to take us out, and we're pretty like psyched to be out now, and would definitely be psyched to go out with anyone really.
Yeah. This is your first actual tour.
Yeah.
That's pretty exciting. I know I had some questions about that, but I felt like being a little bit more freeform for a second.
Yeah, for sure.
So how far into the tour are you right now?
So we're just getting rolling. It's a short run, but we played in DC last night.
Yeah.
With some awesome bands. Day Aches out of Virginia, Doser out of Baltimore, and the Rememberables, who are in DC for the most part. All really cool bands and just good people, like human beings. We had a ton of fun with them last night. Tonight's our second night here at the Cave in Chapel Hill. It's our first time down here. We're all psyched to be here.
Yeah.
Then we're heading out to Atlanta tomorrow, and then we're doing shows down at the Fest in Gainesville. And it's going to be our first time down at the Fest. It's like a legendary festival down there, so we're really excited to go hit it up.
Awesome. Curious, any first impressions of North Carolina?
Excellent.
Glad to hear it, even though you chose the wrong city to come to.
Yeah. Go Wolfpack.
That's right.
We did choose the wrong city. It was out of our hands, really. we didn't choose it. No, first impression's great. We only arrived here a few hours ago, so really looking forward to seeing hopefully a little more tonight. Hopefully get a decent turnout and maybe get a chance to hang out afterwards. But yeah, it's awesome. The whole tour kind of came about. Tim mentioned Fest, and that was kind of the spark that ignited the whole idea. We got a chance to get booked for Fest, which is we were obviously very excited about. It was going to be our first ever show outside of New York, and then we figured, hey, why not make it a trip and kind of, book ourselves some shows on the way down. So hence why it's, you could say a short run, but yeah, it's amazing. I mean, we, especially after, I think the year that last year was with not playing any shows, we played our first show in like 18 months or whatever. A few months ago was our first show back after COVID. So from that to now being able to actually be on the road with the guys and doing this for the first time is super exciting.
Awesome.
Shows after the year that everyone have been like really special so far. Like when we got back together for the first time, we played at a venue in East Village called Bowery Electric. And I remember like, the room was, it was just like packed, and people were like hugging each other, like getting each other beers, like cheersing. There were people who were like getting emotional. It was just like unreal to be back in a room together.
Yeah.
And it just like, once we got on, it just like went insane. Like we just, like everyone just like went off. It was like cathartic for everyone, I think. So this whole thing has been just like really just a ton of fun to be a part of.
And to answer your first question, we're here for the barbecue.
That's right.
Any recommendations?
Yeah. Got to go to
We can backtrack if it's good enough.
the pit in Raleigh. That's what I know. I think there actually is one in Durham, which is probably closer to here. But Chapel Hill is not my territory, so I can't help you out there, sadly. Unless you find like a Smithfield's. But that's everywhere. Well, departing from the tour questions a bit, I had a couple more scattered ones. I'll start with one that's a bit more on topic. I really like the album art for Pollen. I remember I showed some tracks to my friend, and the first thing he said was just, "Oh my God, that album art." And I was like, "Yeah, I would love to know the story behind it." And then I got the email about interviewing you, so now I want to know what's the story behind the album art.
You guys want to do? I mean, the album art is by an amazing artist called Patrick Turk.
Okay.
Who he's incredible. He's out of Texas, Houston, Texas. He's, I think, primarily a collage artist, if not exclusively. And I believe Dave found the art on,
I think it was just Instagram.
just like on Instagram, yeah.
Which is kind of lame, but just Instagram, which is kind of lame, but it was like, whoa, what is this? It was like the one we chose was part of like a series of 20 kind of the same thing. What was it called? It was Blue Star, The Legend of Blue Star or something, right? Which is basically like an urban legend apparently, where they like soaked kids, temporary tattoos in like acid or something, and like kids put it on and got fucked up. But apparently it's not true, but it's kind of a crazy thing to do an art piece on.
Yeah.
That's not the only reason we picked it, but it's just kind of crazy. So anyhow, it just kind of spoke to us. We actually bought the original art from him too. And now he's kind of like on our team a little bit. We have a shirt with him right now, and we want to work with him in the future. Shout out to Pat.
Yeah, the whole canvas that we got is like, it's like a full piece of artwork. That's the collage that's on the album art, and the album art is like a sort of like a cropping of that collage that Dave worked on. Just, he has the visual eye for the band and created sort of like that cover image. We were trying forever to like put a Superbloom logo on it and like a Pollen logo on it and just like have the album name on there and the band name, but it just was like, the artwork is just so cool and like there's so much going on, and it's like it just works the best by itself. So we were all like really happy to where it landed, which was like the most sort of like original, sort of like authentic like part of the art.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, yeah.
Go for it.
I just wanted to say, what I really like about the artwork is that I feel like in most cases, maybe traditionally, bands would either commission the artwork or they would get someone to work on it for them, communicate some sort of vision, and then you have the artist put the whole thing together. And I feel like it was totally reversed for us. We actually, the piece was pre-existing, so the piece already existed, and we saw it and loved it, and then reached out to Patrick. And I think we were pretty surprised maybe by how just into the whole idea he was, and he was kind of saying that he'd always wanted to have one of his pieces be album art, and he felt like it really fit what he was doing. And it turned out that he was actually really into the band, or became into the band.
Wow.
And he basically gave us complete free reign. He said, look, if you guys buy the piece, essentially it belongs to you, and you can fundamentally do whatever it is that you want to do with it, which was amazing. So yeah, again, shout out to Patrick. He's been incredible to deal with, and his art is sick.
It's a easy way to get a new fan. Hey, can I steal your art? Put it on this album? Yeah, definitely. You guys sound great.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but that's definitely a really cool way. Yeah, like you were saying, I feel like with most artists, especially like a lot of like mainstream artists, it's like they have their own specified designer that they have that sort of goes with them throughout the records and helps design all the album covers. But it seems like a lot of things I've heard about like the formation of stuff with this band seems almost like accidental, and it's awesome. Like with the name, it was just like, hey, Superbloom, yeah, we're doing it. And then the album art is just, I don't know, it's not a story you typically hear, but I definitely a fan of it. So I believe my memory is sort of failing me, but I think the tracks that I specifically added to our rotation and the ones I was the biggest fan of were Whatever and Leash. I was wondering if you guys had a track you were proudest of off of Pollen.
I personally like Pollen the best. That's not really an answer. I mean, it's not like a fun answer, but I just like that one the best. It's most fun to play, maybe that's why.
Doesn't have to be a fun answer.
Yeah, it's really fun to play.
Yeah.
So it makes me happy. What you guys? Brian?
I'm a double dip on Pollen. It's great. I think it encapsulates a lot of what we have going on in a bunch of different directions at the same time.
Does it make you
Yeah.
happy?
Yep.
It sparks joy. Pollen sparks joy. I think the arrangement's really good. We spent a lot of time figuring out what we were going to do for that third verse. We rewrote it so many times. It's outrageous. But it really landed, and I think you can hear the work and the...
I really hope that came through in the audio.
yeah.
That is staying in if it did.
Yeah. I'm just super proud of everything on that track, how it turned out. The guitars are slamming. The drum grooves are tight. I got some sweet bass lines in there. Vocals are good. It just rips front to back.
Brian also engineered that song
Awesome.
for all the songs. So he's talking about he got that.
Some. I captured some of it. We had a bunch, yeah.
Little bit of bias.
Yeah, Pollen's great. 1994 also hits really hard. Whatever, of course, is like just another just absolute slammer that's been hitting. Very proud of it.
We're big Twig guys.
Yeah. And you know what? The one that no one talks about because we didn't release it as a single that I think is sweet is Glass Candy Wrapper. It definitely flew under the radar. It's nice. It's just totally, it's pretty out there. It's a later album track for sure. But some diversification on there.
Leash. You mentioned Leash.
Yeah.
Right? I like Leash. Leash is one of the, probably, if not the oldest song on the record in terms of when it was actually written and even recorded. Right. It was like one of the earliest recording sessions we did for the record that wasn't even at the time kind of almost wasn't, not necessarily that it wasn't going to be on the record, but it wasn't recorded with the record in mind almost. It was that far in advance from memory. I could be wrong, but yeah, I like Leash a lot. It has like a special place in my heart because it's a little more dated in terms of how we recorded the other stuff. But I think honestly, it took us a little while to put the record out, and we had a lot of time to go over everything and make sure that we were happy with everything. So I would honestly say that there's no songs on the record that we just put on there because we needed something. There's no like fodder. It's just sort of, there's no filler rather. It's just we got a chance to really make a record with complete independence and only songs that we were proud of and happy with how they turned out, which feels really nice to look back on it and not have a single song that you're like, oh, I wish we hadn't done that, or so I like all of them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, as a whole on the record, we wanted to sort of have the album have sort of a movement to it. And so there's like acoustic songs in there, and then like Glass Candy Wrapper that Brian mentioned has like its own sort of acoustic vibe to it. So it's like there's ups and downs, and we kind of wanted to like have the album sort of be just like a bit more of like a movement, like a journey than like a, just a bunch of like loud songs with feedback, like back to back to back to back. My favorite track is I really like how Whatever turned out, because when we recorded it, when we wrote it rather, it was over the pandemic, and we were like all sort of in different areas of the country at that point. So I think Dave and Mateo, I think you guys laid down the demo with the guitar and drums, and I was like out of state, and you guys sent it to me, and I wrote like a really wacky guitar solo over it and like those weird guitar parts over it. And I was like kind of nervous about what the response would be, but I sent it back and everyone was down with it. So I was like, okay, cool, we can keep it. So I like that the dudes like let me kind of go nuts with it.
Actually, we were all in New Hampshire without Tim, and he sent it, but we were like partying and whatever. And we didn't get back to him for like 3 days. And so we just left him on read. With just like his idea dangling in the wind. And then we're like, oh, yeah, by the way, your guitar solo is sick.
I was wondering, as someone who is an aspiring cinephile, what's everyone's favorite movies or TV shows?
My favorite movie is Catch Me If You Can with Leonardo DiCaprio. I watch it. I try to watch it every year on my birthday. It's sick.
Nice.
We did. We did.
Brian-
I was at Brian's. My parents live in Europe, and I was at Brian's for Brian's family home for Thanksgiving last year, and it was on TV. It started at like 11, and it was on TV, and we were both like, "This is the perfect TV movie. We're gonna watch it start to finish." It wasn't your birthday though, sadly.
That's true. It wasn't my birthday, so missed it. But love a good scam. So
Actually
that's
turned
for
it
me.
Since it's a little bit drizzly, one last question. If you had to visit one country that you'd never been to before, what would that be?
I think going to Japan would be sick. I'm trying to eat some really good ramen. Check out some serious quality snow. See what's going on.
Texas.
It's the absolute worst choice.
You're fired.
Tim? You know, I really want to go to China, actually. I quite recently decided that I would really like to go and spend a decent amount of time there traveling around and eating all the food and seeing all the things. If I had to pick just one country, just because it's enormous enough to be able to do that, but also Brazil.
Y'all gonna come to Brazil?
I was gonna say Brazil or Mexico and Mexico City. I would want our bands to play there because I've seen like festivals and stuff that happen down there. Like I think Deftones has like Dia de los Deftones in Mexico City. The music scenes seem amazing. Just like go out there and play for a new crowd would be sick.
Yeah. Well, since we ran into some unfortunate circumstances with getting good audio quality here and it's starting to rain, I think that about does it. I really want to thank all of you for taking the time to do this interview. I had a blast and really glad that I can share this with the listeners since they've definitely heard a fair share of the album over the airwaves.
Appreciate it.
Any last words?
Shout out to Clay, who's here with us on tour and is just an all-around legend. Sunbeam Tigers. No, thanks for Andrew. Thanks for coming down to meet us in enemy territory, like you said. Go Wolfpack.
Of course.
Our Wolfpack became one stronger.
We really appreciate you taking the time. It's been a lot of fun coming all the way down here. It's been good. So thank you.
Awesome.